Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, the local elections in May will see many seats in the big metropolitan councils in England up for grabs, and the Conservatives may need to brace themselves for a difficult night. A YouGov poll predicts Labour could seize several Conservative councils in London, including one the Tories have never lost before. Emma Vardy's taking a look ahead.
Not since the swinging 60s has anyone done better in local elections than Labour could be about to. A recent YouGov poll is predicting Labour will sweep London with the best result for any party since 1968. One of the most enduring Tory strongholds is here. To this day, Westminster, with its largely affluent population of voters, has never had a Labour-run authority. But if the poll is to be believed, that could now change. This council has been Conservative-controlled ever since the borough was created in the 1960s. But if the swing was big enough to turn this council red, that would top off a very good night for Labour.
The Conservatives are at a position where they could potentially be left with just one, maybe two councils in all of London. I think that would be a bad night for the Conservatives, but it's possible. They are having to fight to hang on almost everywhere they still have representation in London.
But away from London, it could be a different story. Birmingham City Council has been controlled by Labour since 2012. They hold around 2/3 of the seats here. But there's anger over a bin dispute that lasted for months and left tons of rubbish on the streets uncollected. And resentment over budget cuts that are affecting local services.
It doesn't matter who's in, because there's nothing between them. That's the problem, because Birmingham is basically screwed by central government, who've reduced all of our grants.
There's been a lot of problems with the bin collection.
Yes, there have.
Oh yeah.
I think the council, or the Labour-run council, got the blame for that?
Yes.
I would say so, yes. I mean, the more it dragged on, certainly, yes.
This will be the first all-out election for Birmingham City Council since boundary changes. So there's 101 seats here, all up for grabs. It's a place Labour should do well, but could the party be punished over those bins?
Back in the summer, of course, we had the bin strike. It was not the city's greatest moment in time. When I became the leader of the council, I pledged that we would resolve that dispute, which we've now done. And we, the Labour Party here in Birmingham, we're committed to maintaining weekly bin collections going forward for the next 4 years, a commitment that I've yet to hear from either of the other two parties.
Here in Birmingham, the council tax has gone up over 20% in 7 years, but services have gone down and people have seen rubbish left on their streets and they feel it's time for a change.
There are plenty of other places who survive on fortnightly bin collections, with council budgets being constrained. Isn't that a sensible option?
In Birmingham, we're absolutely clear that weekly bin collections need to remain.
Meanwhile, the Liberal Democrats and the Greens remain much stronger in local government than they are in Parliament, and in May will be fighting to increase their local authority presence. While UKIP are likely to continue to struggle to reverse the party's decline. But if the story of the night is the biggest Labour success since the 60s, any high-profile defeats in Tory strongholds could start to make some Conservative MPs worry about their constituencies ahead of the next general election.
Well, Steve, Kate and Ian are still with me, so let's pick up on the local elections. Kate, should Theresa May be deeply worried about this? Was she expecting a bad night in May, and what might the consequences be?
Well, no doubt she will be worried, but my favourite thing about this is that everything is underlined by the fact that ultimately people care more about bins than most other things, and that's what politics comes down to at the end of the day. I think Theresa May will be worried. The local elections, Labour have seen momentum, particularly, are now seeing as a battleground for that party. And if you look at places like Haringey and see quite what's happened to Labour in those areas and how powerful momentum and kind of the left have become in local politics, you see how much it matters to Labour. So I think the Tories will be worried, particularly about London actually, because as the VT said, Labour expect to do quite well, and that's not going to look very good. And Brandon Lewis, who's the new chairman of the party, was saying last week, we do expect some big losses in London. So he's setting that up already. I think that the Tory party is worried. But in areas like Birmingham and other areas around the country, Brexit's likely to be important, and again I think that's why it comes back to Labour's quite muddled on Brexit, and people do vote with their feet, and so if the Tories can win back some seats like Birmingham and other places, it might not be an all-out massive loss for them on the night.
So Ian, the expectation management's already being massaged in advance of possibly some Tory defeats. We always get very excited about these numbers because it's better than an opinion poll, it's actual voters telling us what they think. Do they have consequences for parliamentary politics?
They could do this time. It reminds me a bit, Steve will remember this, you two are far too young, but of 1990 when the Tories did disastrously in local elections. But Kenneth Baker, the Tory party chairman, went out on the media the next day, we've kept Westminster and Wandsworth. Yeah. And bizarrely the media completely fell for it. Now I don't think that's going to happen this time necessarily. But Kate is right that Brandon Lewis, the Tory party chairman, has already started to manage expectations. I mean, he genuinely believes that they're in for a drubbing, particularly in London. But of course these seats, I think, were last fought in 2014, which was when UKIP were doing incredibly well. Now, if you look at local election results over the past year, UKIP's vote has just virtually disappeared. And so all the three other parties, their votes have gone up in by-elections. So it depends where that vote goes. Will the Liberal Democrats be able to hold on to the seats that they won in that year? So, I mean, I expect a bit of a Tory drubbing, but I think it might be patchy. And if they do manage to maybe win Birmingham, which I mean, they won the West Midlands mayoral election, I think Andy Street has been reasonably popular in the West Midlands. If they did that, we're going to get a 1990 situation. That's all they will want to talk about. Even if they lose Westminster at the same time? Yeah, probably, yeah.
And how important is it to Labour to do well in these? Do they need to be seen to be making advances in places like Birmingham, where they already hold it, and into other Tory strongholds in order to keep up the idea that they're on the Tories' heels, they are a government in waiting?
It is obviously important. I don't think actually whatever happens is going to have a huge impact on the national picture, because I think it will just confirm the dynamics as they already are. In other words, Jeremy Corbyn has been in a strong position since the general election, and that will be confirmed. Theresa May has been in a fragile position since the general election, and that will be confirmed. But by that point, Brexit will be reaching or coming close to one of its several climactics, and I think that will shape the national picture. And the local elections will be really important for local government and who inherits the nightmarish budget some of them face, but it won't change the national picture very much.
And Kate, Ian was mentioning that UKIP's vote has been collapsing anyway, and they've not had their troubles to seek recently as well. It'll be important to see where their vote goes, and also it confirms this sense that we're moving back to two-party politics in England, do you think?
I think it does nationally, but I think locally it's a slightly different picture, mainly because the UKIP vote tends to go in all kinds of directions. It doesn't necessarily go where you think it will. So the Liberal Democrats and the Greens do quite well at local elections, whereas nationally they don't do very well at all. And I think sometimes you do see people who would vote for any other party going for literally any other party and not necessarily the Tories and Labour. But again, I think it comes down to how much this comes down to Brexit. Do people care about Brexit, or do they care more about bins? And in some areas where there have been big issues locally, it will be that. In other areas like London, I think Brexit and bigger national issues will have a bearing. And that's why Labour
we'll see candidates telling us that Brexit, one way or another, will help with your bins, no doubt, as well as their out campaigning.
London has become a Labour city. Yeah. This huge capital city with millions and millions has become a Labour stronghold, and that is significant for all kinds of reasons. It's almost become as strong as it used to be in Scotland. Even in 2010 in the general election, London voted Labour by a wide margin. So that is quite a significant development.
Okay, well, we need to leave it there just now.